G'day campers and welcome to another one-on-one, here we go, started off well, another Thursday night live around the campfire. We're doing a few one-on-ones at the minute, so it's fantastic and I appreciate everybody getting around. Tonight we've got with us Darren Bartsch. Hey Darren, how are you?
Good, thanks Scott. Nice to be here with you.
Thank you for coming on board. Kylie Hutchinson.
Hi.
And Lisa Jayne.
Hello.
Thanks, guys, for coming on tonight. And tonight I haven't given introductions on who we are and what we do because we're talking about personal experience. Tonight we're talking about alcohol and the effects of it and what happens. I myself have had a very interesting life around alcohol. I'm no longer a drinker, and I'm finding that looking back through my life, it's created a lot of different opportunities. One of the things I said to my father when I reopened up the conversation was that my last memory of my grandmother was she was a pickled balloon, and that I've held that with me all my life. That's one of the big reasons why I've chosen not to have alcohol in my life with Oscar. I'll dig into that a little bit deeper, but tonight we're going to share each other's stories and talk about and open up discussion about what the effects of alcohol are on other people, not just yourself. So tonight, I'm actually going to ask for Darren to open up for us tonight. And sorry to throw you straight into the fire, Darren, but I think your story is something that we need to jump on straight away and open it up, and then we'll get through with everybody's experience. So welcome, Darren. Welcome to your first Thursday Night Live. Please share with us your opportunity. I'll let you explain it.
I guess I've had a lot of alcohol in my life, on and off throughout my life. I watched my grandpa come back from the war, and as I was growing up as a kid, he used alcohol considerably to numb the pain of war. And that happened a lot. My dad shared a lot of stories that have happened to him with alcohol, aggression, and just being pickled all the time, just causing all sorts of problems. I think you used the word pickled before. I think that's a good word. He was just always drunk. For me, I didn't have too many growing up. It more happened after I finished my professional footy career. I couldn't really stomach alcohol too much when I was playing football, but when I left football and moved to the territory, that's probably when it all started. I just wanted to party, have fun, and it was all the implications that come from alcohol. I probably drank too much there for about 4 years, like I was explaining to you the other day, 4 or 5 years. And then my partner was drinking a lot as well. And it just led to all sorts of crazy things. You just try to function through the day when you're running a business. For me personally, I can't really speak for her, just the implications that come for me. I was struggling to run my business. But then it was just the social implications afterwards, all the traumas, all the situations that happened with kids over the last 15 years, with pretty much until probably 2 years ago. It was probably the most trauma that I've had in my life has come from alcohol or alcohol-related, either violence, circumstances with my kids, where the kids have had long periods of time away from their mum, just due to alcohol symptoms, and just the whole upheaval that has come from the family over a long period of time because of alcohol. I've seen so much of it through sport and how it's used in a social scene in sport, professional sport afterwards. I don't know what it's like nowadays, but it was a long time ago. I can't speak for the current era. But it just seems to be that it's the drug that's on every street corner, yet with no one's doing anything about it. It causes most trauma that I've seen in society, yet nothing's done about it. It's openly available at any street corner. And I see that it's just causing so many problems in society, but we don't seem to be doing anything about it. I'll start there, and I'm sure we'll have plenty more to talk about.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Kylie.
Yeah, growing up for me, I saw it around, and not anything that in my family was abused, but it was always, Dad had a beer in his hand, Mum wasn't much of a drinker, was always just that social aspect, so it was always there. I ended up in hospitality, running pubs, and I met over the years, countless alcoholics, and I saw some horrible stuff that they did to get drinks. I also saw a beauty in them, that they bonded together, and they, like-minded people would find each other and support each other. Over the years, we had a few in the pubs that died, various cancer. One guy was more sudden, literally fell down a set of stairs drunk and broke his neck. And, the pub I was at, we organised a bus to take them all to the funeral and stuff. And I met his son, and I said to him, "Are you the one that works at here, or are you the one with the daughter?" And he sort of went, "How do you know?" And I said, "Mate, I know the grog had your dad, and I know it's a demon that he couldn't handle, but it didn't mean that he didn't love you. He just didn't know how to show it. And he did used to come in and talk about you kids and his granddaughter, and he just couldn't do it." And I remember saying that to him and thinking, just really got to be conscious of that. As much as it is socially acceptable, and like Darren said, on every corner and everywhere you go, it's available, I've always been really careful of being aware of that line. Like, where's that line? And it's definitely blurred. Like, there's more than one time in my life where I've woken up and thought, well, that was well and truly over the line. But that comes from me being exposed to it and seeing people around me handling it. If you come from a different background, all you've ever seen is people not handling it, you don't know. You don't have, it's a skill, and it shouldn't be there. Like, I worked in pubs for years, and I always said, "God, we just rip people off with this. It's terrible." But I always think it's a skill that we need to navigate it, considering how much it is advertised and pushed on us, and how much people make from it, and the taxes on it, and everything that's there, and the services aren't there to back up when people can't handle it. And that's through, there's various different reasons why people can't handle it, and some people are just able to pull themselves out of it, and other people just need a lot more help to get themselves out of it.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Lisa?
That's an interesting thing, like just listening to you guys talk and the journeys that you've had with it. It's such a thing, isn't it? Like, it was such a thing in my childhood. Like, when I was a kid, all of my parents' friends would come around and we'd all sit around a bar. So there was like this thing that was created, but that was like this bar that people would sit around. And even as a kid, I was given like lemon, the lemon lemonade, the advocaat, the egg advocaat and the strawberry advocaat. And like, it was a great thing that the kids could sit up there and drink alcohol with the adults. Like, oh my God. Anyway, that's how I was raised. But and then I grew up and I married an alcoholic who was a functioning alcoholic. But that got worse and worse and worse until really our lives, mine and my children and his life, all revolved around that bottle. So nothing could happen unless he had the bottle. So we'd go on holidays and we'd have to stop at the grog shop on the way out the driveway, so he had some grog to go with him. Like, everything revolved around the bottle. And then I was in a relationship with a recovered alcoholic, which is a totally different situation altogether. And I noticed that the need for alcohol, which is often people's ways of addressing, some people will use it to address an emotional need or whatever. I really don't fully understand why any of us can get dependent on things, you know, like I think everyone is so unique, and his way, once he wasn't using alcohol, was just transferred to other ways of dealing with things that he didn't like in his life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had an experience with someone that was full on, totally just, I've never ever seen anyone drink so much 24/7. And that was just this like incredible eye-opener for me. And after all that, I'm like, wow, what's wrong with me? That I've got these people in my life, and maybe I'm the sick one, you know? I'm like, that was like, wow. And I mean, it's true because, you know, I've chosen that in my life. So I had to take some responsibility for choosing these relationships. But I think it's right. I think alcohol, we are so programmed to drink alcohol. And I actually wonder if there's a lot of conscious choice around it. Like, it is such a program. Right? Like, even some of the glasses that we're given for soft drinks, it's all to get that program happening. And I look around and I think, wow, do we actually consciously go, I really like the taste of this, or this is making me feel good, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's just a habit. Is it a habit?
Yeah.
I think it's culture.
Culture.
Yeah. Because we always raise a glass to celebrate a life, to celebrate a death, to celebrate a solution. We're always raising a glass. And it's something for me, well, alcohol's played a huge part in damaging my opportunities earlier in life. And my first drink would have been sitting there with my father when he was hungover, sitting in bed. The first thing I had was a Kahlua. Come here, son, sit and have a Kahlua with me, after he sat there all night and, you know, drank with all the boys, and that was his opening. And that's something I want to talk about, the culture of alcohol, because I, as a non-drinker, it took me a long time to be able to sit there with people and, sorry, mate, I don't drink. And what I copped from that was, well, I've actually had to learn to say, yes, mate, I'd love a drink. I can always have a sparkling water, so that I'm not putting my stuff, because it felt like I was putting my stuff on people. So the culture of alcohol, let's open that up. Let's see where it's at, because, and I'm going to start with you again, Darren, because sporting clubs, and I want to give a big tick of approval to Lance Piccioni, who actually goes into sporting clubs and talks about this particular issue, because so many guys have their first drinks at the footy club for the under 14s, under 15s. They have a good wit. All the dads go, this is how we're making you a man. So something to, if we start with you, Darren, drinking culture. Yeah. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it's rampant, personally. I think it's rampant through, well, it was. I haven't played since the mid-90s, but the time that I did through the 80s and 90s, it was rampant. Up until this year, I would still watch the AFL and still watched a lot of the NRL, and you see a lot of the players that are still getting themselves in trouble, either end-of-season parties, end-of-season trips, weekends. They're out getting drunk on a regular basis, and it's when they have copious amounts of alcohol is when they seem to get in trouble. If they go out there responsibly and have one or two with some dinner, you know, you don't hear those guys getting in trouble. It's always the guys that are intoxicated, who are out there causing problems, and then they cause a media problem for their clubs. And I know you don't seem to hear it as much in the ladies' side. Maybe I've missed that, and you ladies can fill us in on that. But I seem to see it more in men, young men, and it seems to be an egoic thing that's in young males to see how much they can drink and the stupid things that they can do. And it seems to be like a culture that's, you know, they seem to salute them and go, yes, fantastic, you know, because you've knocked off a bottle of scotch or you've knocked off a bottle of bourbon or whatever it may be. It seems to be a culture around that. You know, the more that you can drink, you know, the bigger the hero you are. But that seems to be causing more problems. I don't know, how are you ladies finding it from the women's perspective? But that's just my observation of young men, especially up to, you know, in their mid-teens, you know, probably say 17, 18, right through to about 30, maybe even early 30s. You see some of the guys. seems to be the late 20s. They seem to, in the sporting guys, they seem to be getting a bit more mature. The early 20s, mid 20s seem to be the ones that are right into it. By that stage, it's a massive culture shift. How are you girls finding it from the women's perspective?
Yeah, I think women still drink, maybe not to that extent. And my personal opinion, I think they don't do it just from a personal safety point of view. Bad things happen when women get drunk and pass out.
Yeah.
So, so I'm not saying women don't drink and don't drink to that level. And I've definitely seen functioning female alcoholics, and I've seen alcoholics in the pub too. But there is a mentality amongst boys to encourage each other to continue to drink and, outdo more and more. Yeah. More so than with women, I think.
Why do you think that? Because I was thinking about that, and I've got twin boys that are 27 now, and I noticed like their dad was the functioning alcoholic, and in every photo of him, there was always a beer in his hand or a beer sitting beside him. And now I look at my sons, and there's always a beer in their hand or a beer sitting beside them, and I'm like, looking at it and just thinking like, it's just like this repeated thing. And I read once that this, like, women have the onset of menstruation, which they can feel like they've moved into womanhood. And there's like a line that we cross when we become women. And if men don't have that opportunity through ritual or ceremony or whatever it is that we used to have in the past, is that having that alcoholism part of that ceremony, part of that, like you were saying, Darren, I remember at uni, like the guys with the beer bongs, and like they would just be pouring alcohol down the, women weren't often involved in that. But admittedly, there were one or two women that obviously had these like different relationships to alcohol than the rest of women. However, it was mostly a boy thing. Yeah. So I totally get that. And that, I thought that was really interesting. Like, is that that lack of having a ritual to celebrate a man's worthiness and movement into manhood, that means that they look for other ways to prove that they've actually become men, do you think? Like, what do you guys think about that?
Absolutely. That's exactly what the Campfire Project's about. It's about helping boys to become men in a different atmosphere where it's not, we're not trying to be the man, we're becoming a man. We're a part of a community where we work together, and that's Alan's big push. And like I'm a big advocate of that. And one of the things with culture, like I was a massive drinker. I literally just spoke to my brother earlier today and told him I have a discussion on alcohol and the effects of it. I went up to Queensland to visit him. In 5 days, we drank solidly for 5 days. We drank 104 cans in the first day. That was my life. And I sat with him, and I'm like, I'm so grateful that I don't do that anymore, because I look at my son. That's how we grew up. That's how we just, and I don't do that. And it was all because of that ad. I don't know if everybody saw that ad. The eyes are watching me. I came home from work one night. Oscar's come up to the front door with a Corona. He'd taken the top off it, put a lemon into me, and given it to me with a smile on his face.
Wow.
That's the last time I had a beer.
Wow.
It's that big an impact as fathers. Our kids, our sons in particular, are watching every single thing we do. Our daughters are learning what kind of man they want. So the impact for me is a culture. Sorry?
Do you think that's connection too? Like,
Absolutely.
Do you think that part of that is your son going, oh, this is how we connect? Like, this is what we do to connect. Like, this is what we teach you.
It's the very first thing we do. Have a beer. Hey, have a beer. What are you doing tonight? Let's have a drink. What are you doing tonight? And that's actually why I created Sunday sessions, to have a place where I could actually spend time with people where I wasn't drinking. So, but I'm going to...
solution then, if we're not connecting with alcohol, what's the solution?
Yeah. I want to, if we can, I want to dive into solutions a little bit later, if that's all right, because there's a couple of things I really want to open up. Safety is a big one, and that's one thing I think Darren brought up that I really want to talk about, because these days, with I don't know if it's the equality movement or young women are blowing themselves apart and trying to keep up with blokes left, right, and centre. And only in my experience, I've never seen a woman keep up with a man and end up in a better situation in ranking. My sister was pretty good at it, but just the safety side of it for women. And if we could open that up, and we'll start with you, Lisa, please.
Okay. Very interesting. I've heard some very frightening stories about women that have given up alcohol because they may have gone into a blackout, and they've woken up the next morning and they've found themselves, obviously they've been raped and had no awareness of what happened to them. And I think that is like, I've left out all of the graphics of that because that was a lot more graphical. But this particular story, I was just like, holy dooly, you know. And I think sometimes, you know, the alcohol, I know for me as a teenager, it got me into situations where I was just bloody lucky that I wasn't in a situation that I couldn't get out of. I was just really lucky. And it wasn't because I was making good decisions, because once you get drunk, you generally don't make great decisions. But I was just lucky. So, you know, and I've heard some terrible stories, and I've seen some terrible things, and you still see it. If you go out and you see young girls and, you know, the lolly drinks that they sell them now that are just like little bottles of sugar, and they can't even taste the alcohol, and you can drink like 10 in half an hour, and, you know, and you see girls, you know, and it's just, you know, and you go, like, Kylie, you relate to this, you know, you go to the women's toilets when you go out into a nightclub or something, and like, it's great. If you're feeling bad about yourself, you just go into the ladies' toilets, because it's, oh, darling, I love your skirt. It's beautiful. Oh, you're just so beautiful. Like, it's so good. You just stand in the ladies' toilets, and they all come in and out, and they're all telling each other, they're all pissed as farts. So it's just like, oh, well, good, now go back out, have another drink. I don't know if you guys do that, but girls definitely do that.
No, we definitely don't go to the toilet with the other guys.
Lisa, you're giving away girl code secrets. Stop it.
I think this would be great. You know, let men be privy to these conversations. What do we talk about in our, you know, like, I think this is really enlightening men. You know what goes down in these places?
Yeah.
But, you know, like, I just think it's one of those things, isn't it, that it takes away your power of conscious choice.
Yes.
And I think anything that takes away your power of conscious choice, it can't serve you, you know?
Yeah. I've seen some funny stuff in toilets, guarantee, like women in toilets is a whole experience. But I've also seen some really bad stuff, you know, walked in and I've, you know, noticed that the cubicle was taking ages, because girls' toilets always take ages, but had to call security and, you know, had to kick a door down to get to her and pants her around the ankle. She passed out drunk on the toilet seat, and I can't lift her, you know. I need a bloke to help me lift her and get her out of there. And I'll never forget that one. The security guard saying to me, am I going to hit her in the head if I kick the door open? Kylie, oh God, you know, it's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. And then me having to go at the manager and say, what the hell are you doing serving them till they're that point, you know? We need to keep it better. And it wasn't my venue. I wasn't, just for the record, it wasn't my, but I was like, what the hell, you know? But yeah, seen some horrible stuff in there. And I personally think women ease up a little bit, because at some point or another, we've gone through a situation where we've gotten too drunk, and some, you know, we've all learned that lesson the hard way. Some of us have learned a lot harder than others. And that's, you know, a talk for another day. But I think that women generally don't do that culture thing that men do. And for the boys, it's almost a safety in numbers. It's almost like, if I drink and then my mates will stay around me because they never leave one behind. There'll be a pack of boys and they never lose one. You know, they'll never go to another place and leave their mate there. There's always a pack that will go. And whereas the girls, it's almost like you've got to avoid that pack, you know. So I think that's, that culture and that mentality and that possibly wanting to belong. And I can tell you from running pubs, when I see that pack walk in, I will pick the one that will be my target. And when it starts to get real, he'll be the one that I pull up. There'll be the one that's a little more sober than the others, possibly bigger but not as doofy. You know, there'll be one that generally will be able to keep control of them a little bit. And you can grab him and say, all right, get your mate out. And they generally all follow when that happens. So there is definitely a pack mentality that goes with it. And I think it's a sense of belonging. And maybe it is. Maybe it's about not having the rituals and not having that.
I think it's a culture. I think it's a culture.
Yeah.
Because it's that, as far as in my personal experience, you know, everything's revolved around having a drink. One of my closest mates, you know, he calls it the superpower, me not drinking. And I think that's a shame, you know, because that they hold it in that high esteem that it's just not that normal. And, you know, I'm looking around these days and a lot more guys aren't drinking. A lot more guys are taking responsibility for their actions. Because that's one of the profound things for me was I need to be completely responsible for everything I do. I have to be responsible as a parent and choose that not for me. It's only me personally. My wife drinks, I have no drums with it. But I'm responsible for every action. Whereas I used to say, no, I was drunk. No, I'm hungover, I can't be bothered, can't do this. I don't have those excuses anymore. So I've become responsible for me. So I'm going to, did you want to add anything to that, Darren?
I just look at all the hassles that go out in society, male or female drinking, but just looking at it from the female's perspective. Like even I lived in the Territory for 10 years and got to see it firsthand, even with our cultural side of things from the Aboriginals as well. Ones that weren't in culture who were kicked out of the tribes would come into town and they would drink themselves to oblivion, and the women were probably the worst out of it. They would get themselves into all sorts of crazy troubles. The ones that were in culture, you know, out in the communities, you know, they didn't, whilst they did a little bit, but they certainly didn't do it as much as the ones that were kicked out of the tribe. You know, all the hassles I had with my ex-wife when she was an alcoholic. So I can relate to you, Lisa. You had an alcohol ex-husband, alcoholic ex-wife. I'm really grateful that she's actually got her acting together now, and you know, very proud of her for that she's actually took her a long time to break a really bad habit. And now she's actually got, you know, she's free of alcohol and her life's completely changed. So it can be done, but you know, it's a really hard thing to break. One thing I remember her saying one day is, you know, it's easier to walk across the road and grab some alcohol than it was to deal with the problems that are going on in her life. It was easier just to mask it with something so I didn't have to think about it than it was to actually do something about it. So I think that's, you know, whilst we've got a culture of drinkers, we've got to find a solution so we can change to something else. We've got to create some role models who are doing it without alcohol to create a new solution to head in a different direction. Because at the moment, we might have alcohol here, but what are we going to? When everyone's promoting alcohol as this fantastic thing, available on every street corner, anyone can do it anytime, and it's easier to drink than it is to fix the problems. It's like got to find a solution to move to, otherwise we've got more of the same.
Well, it is another. Sorry, go. Okay.
I was going to say there was something that made me think of something that I heard when one of my previous partners was in AA. And I remember hearing something there when they were saying that the time that you start drinking is the time that you stop growing. So if you start drinking at the age of 13, emotionally, you don't actually mature beyond that. And that makes a lot of sense to me because it's like I see human beings as almost like trees, like we grow out of our environment. And that growth is the emotional growth that we have through living a life experience. So if we have things that trigger us and that's how we grow is our experiences. But if we're drinking alcohol and suppressing the internal growth that we get from experiences, which is what the alcohol does, it doesn't allow us to use our experience to grow. It would make sense to me that emotionally we're not growing. We're not growing on the inside when we're drinking alcohol and using it like that. And so if that's the case, there's a lot of adults or people in adult bodies that are emotional kids. And I think you can see that often in those behaviours,
Yeah.
Well, alcohol is the number one numbing tool of our society. The number one. It's the second most addictive substance in the US behind tobacco. Then marijuana is it's 18 million, estimated 18 million alcoholics, 4.2 million marijuana users, 2 million cocaine users. That's an estimated. So it's going to be well above that. It's the number one tool for numbing. So let's go into that, because at the end of the day, last week we had a conversation talking about drug addicts, and it's no different. People use it to numb, except that it's a tool that we use to celebrate. It's a tool we use to commiserate. It's a tool I've had a shit day. I'm going home. I'm having a drink because that's going to make it all better. It doesn't actually make anything disappear. I myself, with personal side of things, I remember all the parties as I was growing up with my parents. They would only end when people were belting the crap out of each other. Alcohol-related violence is huge. In Melbourne at the moment, with lockdown, alcohol sales have gone through the roof. They are not releasing any statistics about domestic violence, about anything to do with any mental health or suicides at the minute. I'm going to be careful. I've just come off another call before I come on here. Another one. When as a society we're going to start taking responsibility, and I'm sorry, I'm putting my own shit into this right now, but when are we going to start taking responsibility for our actions and actually stand up and create a society that we all actually want to live in? Our choices make our society. I think we need to look at our values, and I'm sorry, I've just dumped my shit in there, but I'm pretty passionate about it, because we're all here sitting here having a conversation because we genuinely give a shit about each other.
Absolutely.
Darren, your experience with alcohol, let's go into right into it. How much does it hurt you and your family?
Absolutely. Took me to the depths of despair from alcohol. Things have settled down in the last probably 2 years. But from 1996 to, 2020, 96 to 2018, what's that? 12 years? 22 years, whatever.
Yeah.
Something, long time.
Yep.
Yeah, and I was no angel either. I spent 4 or 5 years partying and drinking too. I have to agree with what Lisa said. My brain cells, I think, were destroyed and I went backwards from a growth perspective. So I 100% agree with you. And I'm really grateful at the moment that my 2 boys, who are 15 and 17, have never seen me drunk, ever, in those 17 years. I'm really proud of that. And I'm certainly, I don't want to get drunk in front of my boys. I'll have a wine here and there. Very rare that I'll have a drink. If I do, I might have a glass of red. But it's not there to get drunk, and it's not there to try and get rid of my problems, because that's the other problem. That's the other thing that we have in this, I believe, in this country. While we're suppressing it, we're not talking about it. While we're not talking about it, we're pushing our feelings down further. I don't think we know how to have open conversations in this country. Maybe around the world, I don't know. Maybe a cultural thing around the world. We just don't know how to have open conversations. Because when someone does open up, they want to push them down. But how do we get our things off our chest unless we talk about them? How can we openly try and work through things that are emotional unless we talk about them? Every time we suppress them, we push them down further and we're going to relive it more. So it's been able to create a culture now where it's acceptable to actually be able to talk freely about what's going on for you and not be laughed at. Because that's the other thing. It's like the media creates this example of who we should be as a human being, male and female. I feel sorry more for you ladies because all the body image things that you have to go through and all these models that are out there saying that you have to be like that. Now kids are buying the bullshit. They're buying that bullshit. They're all getting face made up. All the pictures are all being photoshopped, and people are buying that bullshit. It's like the fact that someone wants to be real, they actually get put down for being real. It's like, well, how about we start having some real conversations? Because this is the only way we're going to fix it. Having some real conversations and creating a new direction. So there's my start on that.
Yeah, beautiful.
I'm preaching to the converted like you, mate. I'm preaching to the converted. Alcohol is freaking painful for families. It really is.
Yeah.
And it's not okay to talk about it. Well, we need to make it that it is okay to talk about it and start bringing it out in the open.
Brilliant. Thank you. Because I feel how much pain it's cost you. We've had a big conversation about it. And it's something that I feel the damage of it, we constantly talk about the damage of the individual of alcohol, but we never talk about the damage of the society and the people surrounded with the people. It's no different to living with an addict, except it's acceptable to be drunk. So, Kylie, do you want to throw something in on that, please?
Yeah, it's definitely a acceptable, people are just drinking. Whereas if you said, oh, he's just an ice addict, different reaction from people.
Yes.
And, my ex-boyfriend was an alcoholic and got progressively more violent. And then he would give up, he'd be a bit rough and aggressive. And I'd say, all right, like, no, you shouldn't drink. And he'd go, no, I'm really sorry. And he'd give up for like 8 or 9 months at a time. But then he'd say, oh, I'm okay, I'm just having light beer, or I'm just having a few. And it would slowly progress again over the next 6 months. And next thing you know, he's drinking 2 cartons a week and every night of the week. And it'd blow up again. And eventually it just got to the point, the 3rd time it blew up, I just said, you do it again and I'm out. And the 4th time I was out. And it was bad. Like, I had to call the police. And the police were asking me these questions, about, there's this list of domestic violence questions that they ask you. I didn't know these, but there's about 12 questions. And they're like, has your partner ever done this? Have your partner ever done this? And he asked why, and I was like, no. And he got to one and I had to say yes. And I burst into tears and I said, I'm that woman. I'm that woman that stayed and put up with it. And I said, I'll never be that woman again. I can't. I'm the one that has gotten people out of this. I'm the one who has gotten people out of domestic violence situations. I'm the one who turned up with a ute and put people in my house and, covered for people at work and banned abusive partners from places. And that was me. And I said, suddenly I was in it and I didn't realise. And he was like, it's okay. And I'm like, it's not okay. It's not. He said, well, just never go back. And I said, I promise I won't. And I won't. And I never have. But it's the impact of that. And you see it, you just see it all the time. And now I just say to people, oh, you just chose the grog over me. Like you couldn't stay off it. But I think what Lisa said about the emotional level, he definitely regressed to a jealous 16-year-old boy. Absolutely. And it's the fallout from that, and then his kids and my kids, and his parents, like, you know, they've had to go, I've had to say, well, this is why we broke up, because this is what he did. People just sort of shake it off. People shake it off. Yeah. Whereas I've got friends at the moment, his brother's in jail now for ice addict and drug and all the things that go with getting money to buy for that. But they were very secretive. They didn't want to tell anyone. They didn't want to ask for help. And by the time they all started talking to each other, they found out that each of them had been giving him money. And whereas I think when it's drinking, that's a little bit more open, but it's almost like, oh, but it's just alcohol. Yeah, which is the impact of abuse of any kind, drug, alcohol, sex, whatever. The impact is far-reaching and massive consequences, life-changing for everyone.
I think you can lose everything really when you go down that pathway of, you know, when it's abusive or there's the addiction pathway. Like, but I totally get that there has to be a lot of leverage to want to stop because it meets a lot of needs, you know.
Yeah, there's self-medicating and not facing that, because he would go to a psychologist and stop drinking, and he'd go about 3 visits, and he'd say, yeah, all right, no, I'm good. He's not helping me. It's like, no, your psychologist has gotten you to a point and you have to do the hard work. You don't want to do it. Yeah. And that...
Can I say thank you?
Oh.
Can I say thank you for choosing to actually walk away? I know how hard that is. When you've got the security of somebody, you've got the money coming in, you're in a financial world, that you're probably a lot better off.
Yeah.
And you take the brave step of stepping into the unknown and not sure, and, you know, not having as much money, so you don't have the security. I want to say thank you for that.
Thank you. You know, I've been on my own before that, but then to be in a relationship and then go on my own, that's different. But there was a no-brainer, you know. Jack was seeing it, and it's a little crazy there for a while, but anyway.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's okay.
Lisa, I'm going to ask for your experience on this too. And thank you, guys.
It's okay, honey.
I think that what I've learned from being in a relationship with alcoholics is that, for me anyway, there was a part of me that was, I think it was like my inner child. And that part of me that wanted to not lose that relationship or not be abandoned or whatever it was. And it was almost like she had her hands like this. So the adult me may very well have gone, this is totally effed up. You've got to get the hell out of here. But the inner child was like, so the adult me didn't really see the reality, you know, like sort of, it's almost like there was a part of me, the part of me that could have acted was shut down because of that childhood trauma of abandonment. And it was so interesting because, and I'm sure that so many people in relationship with addicts or alcoholics have these similar feelings where you just feel so powerless, and I just remember praying, and I remember visualizing and thinking, if I loved him differently, if I changed this, if I did that, like I would just do all of these things. And it never, ever changed. It never changed. And in fact, it got worse because the framework of the relationship, the dynamics of the way we were in relationship together, they couldn't change unless we both changed.
Yeah.
And unless we addressed our emotional needs differently. So for him, he would feel something, he would shut down, he would drink. I would be trying to get his love, and so I would be doing things to help him, make him love me or try to fix him. And so we had this ongoing all the time, these dynamics. And until I got to the point where I could stand back and go, you know what, actually, I'm not responsible for that. that's his choices, and I actually have to just look at me and look at why I'm choosing this, and why is it, what is it in me that's choosing this relationship? What is it in me that wants to fix him? And you know, and it's so interesting, Kylie, because you're saying like those, you sort of, it's not even that you see it and you ignore it sometimes. I think for me, and like people say to me, oh, you must have on some level, like you must have known, and I don't know, like on an unconscious level, I must have known, I'm sure on an unconscious level. But I can actually literally remember sitting there and looking at my first husband like 2 years before I left him, and looking at him and thinking, I felt nothing. Like there was no connection. I didn't admire the way he lived his life. Like there was nothing. And yet I never had the next thought, which most normal people would feel. Most people would go, oh, I don't feel anything. Maybe I need to do something. Maybe I need to think about leaving this relationship, or maybe I need to go and talk to somebody about it, or never had the next thought. So it was like that thought dropped in, the awareness dropped into my head, and then it was like the little girl went, oh, no, don't look. I just didn't see it, you know. And it's very interesting. Like it's so interesting, and it's definitely an opportunity for not only the person that's drinking to take back their power from that, because essentially they also feel so incredibly powerless, I'm sure. And I know the people I've spoken to, they feel so powerless and so much shame, and they don't need us to go, I just wish you'd give up that bloody drink, you know, like, because that doesn't help them at all. But they feel that and we feel that. And really, it's just the opportunity that we both have to go, let me see myself clearly. Let me see what it is that makes me work like this clearly, so that I can empower myself in this situation. You know, and that is the point, I think, that things start to change for one of you anyway.
Yeah. Well, I agree. It's a difficult conversation because, like, every single person I know has been affected by alcohol in some way or another. No one's getting out of life at the moment without that. And I noticed, I'm being cautious because I sort of want to say something, but I just want to. Brain injury comes when we went through the scenario with Marcella's accident. Speaking to the surgeon, and he was saying brain injury is the same as being drunk, and spending a lot of time inside the trauma unit at the Alfred Hospital, I learnt a lot. And if that's the damage it does to the brain, to our decision making, I think if everybody saw that, we'd see things a little bit differently. And I'm actually going to flip this a little bit because we're already at the 50-minute mark almost. Surprise, surprise, we can keep talking phrases. But I actually want to sit and look at solutions, because too often we have discussions based upon, what the problems are. And I think it's going to lead me into another conversation I want to have about politics one day, because we sit here and we, especially in Victoria at the moment, everyone's pointing fingers and blaming and doing bits and pieces. I'd much rather hear solutions. I'd much rather have people come in and go, do you know what? I don't like that. This is, but how can we come up with a solution? So I would love to hear what each person has for a solution. Yeah, I know that's putting you completely on the spot, but it's a pretty heavy one. So, Darren, what would your solutions be? Well,
I think we need to get back to like communities, small communities. I think we talked about this the other day too, Scott, when we were talking about growing communities of men and women, and like women being able to have circles, men have circles, or be able to be involved in a community where you can create safe spaces to be able to start talking about things. It's all good for someone to be able to share. They have to feel like they're safe. I think that's probably the biggest thing of life, because no one is going to share unless they feel safe. Because if they feel like they're going to be ridiculed of any kind, they're going to shut up shop and say nothing and throw away the key. So it's like, how do we create some safe spaces? And I don't have the answer to this, but I think creating safe spaces is a really important start. That ability or that place, whether it be one-on-one or small groups, where people can hear other people's stories and being able to share openly in a safe place. So no, sitting in a men's circle for a few years, I don't sit in one anymore, but I did for a while. And it was quite empowering to have a safe space to be able to throw things at, and you knew that it wasn't going to get used against you. Because I find that one of the biggest things is when you share openly with someone, if you don't have a safe space, is they then take that information, they use that against you, and then that makes you feel more disempowered. So somehow we've got to create some safe spaces so that people can start being vulnerable, start opening up their heart, and start to share what's really going on for them, so that we can really hear their stories, hear their pain, and they can get it out. Because while they're suppressing that pain, like, I'll give you an example. We had a local guy, I'm involved with Toastmasters, which is a fantastic organisation for those who are struggling with being able to speak in public. And we had one of our guys that had been with the club for almost 2 years, and he actually committed suicide about 4 weeks ago. And no one knew the pain that he was going through at that time. No one. And I thought, well, everyone thought, that's the thing, everyone thinks everyone else is okay, but you don't really know the pain that someone's actually going through. So how do we create that space where someone who is going through so much pain can feel like they feel safe to be able to reach out? I don't have the answer to that, but I think that is the first place that we're going to look at, that people who are struggling and people who have their heart closed, we need to create a space somehow where they can feel comfortable to start to share some of that emotion and start to let some of it out to heal. I know that's a starting point.
I agree it is. Like, I truly believe, like, one of the very first times I had to deal with suicide opportunity, I got there in time, and we got all the boys around it. Everybody turned up with a beer, to have a beer with him. That's our culture, that's our society. Until we start having conversations like this, so we won't be able to change anything. I'll never forget that day. It took all my strength to keep him with us. And everybody kept trying to have a drink with him. Sorry, but this is very real, and this is what our culture is.
Yeah.
So we need to start talking about it honestly. And Darren talking about men's groups. I think they're a great opportunity for men to gain strength, so that we've got strength enough to talk with women. We can check it out. We can run it by other guys and actually go, hey, listen, I've got to have this conversation. But we need leaders in society. We need role models who'll stand up and show us how to do these things.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to go to a real heavy point there, but it's the impact is exactly what our society is. Our society's in a place where we accept too much and we don't stand up to say it's not okay.
The day I left my relationship, he'd been drinking for all night. Like, it was pretty much about 24 hours by then.
Yeah.
And I said, I've got to go. And he rang one mate who rang me and said, I'm not coming to get him. I'm not going to deal with him, Kylie. I'm actually not having it at my house with the state that he's in and with the boys. And, are you getting out? And I said, I'm getting out, but he's just drinking and I'm just trying to get some stuff and get away. And he said, I'll ring Matt. And so he rang another guy who rang me and said, I'll come and get him. And I said, all right. and he came and got him and took him back to his house and got him even drunker. And then when he got out of control, he brought him back. And that's when I had to call the police. There is a special place in my heart that I haven't yet forgiven that guy for that. But drinking at this point is not helpful. It's not helping anyone. And there, and I know I say to girls in women's groups that I say, when a man is like this, all of us girls have to stand together. We all have to be the one saying no. We can't have one of you being a sacrificial lamb and putting up with his abuse. When all the girls stand together and say no, the men will pull up. And that's sort of the mentality behind Me Too. It's all of them coming together. And we're at that point now with men. There are some wonderful men, and I'm blessed to know them. Thank you. And they stand up. You're just not loud enough. We need you to be a little louder. Because the culture and the mentality and the people doing the wrong thing are louder. And it's a big, big ask to change culture. And, it's probably generational. I don't think we'd see it in our generation, but, I know we're all doing our best. But it's the solution to the problem is to have more men that stand up and say no, and to not be the only one standing in a group trying to give a guy suicidal beer.
Yeah.
That's the solution.
We all need to take responsibility for this.
Yeah.
That's the only way in which it happens. It doesn't have to be a government-sanctioned opportunity.
No.
We need to take responsibility ourselves and stop blaming other people. Like I'm right now, Kylie, I'm so angry with the society that sent him back to you.
Yeah. But it happens time and time again. And ultimately, even the police. An AVO is just a piece of paper. It doesn't stop them.
Yeah.
It's the court systems that slap them on the wrist.
Yeah.
It's the police officer in Queensland that gave out a domestic violence address to a former partner for a woman on the run with her children. The culture is huge, and it is there, and it's a big problem. And I wish we could all just say no and it would be all right. But it's a big problem. And all you can do is control your little bit. You can control your family. You can be a shining light in your little community. You can try and fix your little bit, and then hopefully you'll find another little one that's the same, and you'll be branches of the same tree sticking together for support.
That's what it takes.
Yeah.
Make the decision, own your values, and support one another. That society, I don't want to dive into it right now because it's not about that, but I think I've pretty much talked to all of you about our society and what we're going to do. Conversations like this are the starting point, but it's when we follow through with our words that the true actions actually take place. So, Lisa, sorry. Thank you so much, Kylie.
Thanks.
The solution. I think the solution is actually each of us being able to feel a sense of inner freedom with our uncomfortable states. And I think that's actually learning how to see the truth in any situation, which is essentially that it is an opportunity that we need to move through to grow. Like, that's just an experience that if we look at it like that rather than as a problem, it helps us move through our stuff. But also, I think we often, I don't know, but I know in the past I had a lot of judgment. And I can actually say that when I've been with an alcoholic that I've judged, it just got worse. When I was with an alcoholic that I just sat with and I completely accepted and just went, well, you'll make the decision at some stage to move on when you're ready to, and I didn't take responsibility for that. Admittedly, I wasn't living with that alcoholic, so it was easy for me to step out. But the thing was, because he felt fully accepted and not judged, he then made the decision to change his behavior as a way of, dealing with his life. But the thing is that what I've noticed is that people that do that, they have this incredible hidden talent, and you guys would know these people, when they actually put down that drink, that it's just unbelievable what they're capable of. And it just goes to greater and greater levels, it's amazing. And at that point, they have leverage where they can go, do I want to lose this or do I want to pick up the drink? So it's almost like that leverage starts to build. The more sober they get and the more they see that they can actually really engage with their lives in an empowered way, the more they go, I don't want to lose this for that. I don't want to lose this to pick up that drink. But it's almost like they've just got to go long enough to find that leverage, It's about all of us doing our own work so that we can create the safe places, so that I can sit and I can hear somebody without judging them or without blaming them and own my stuff and not have to go and speak of it somewhere else or bring up shit after 2 years and go back to you did this to me, you did that to me. That is about me owning my stuff. And I think the more we start to evolve in that way, the more we can create those safe places, because they are absolutely imperative to us to feel like we're okay. We've got this shit happening, but essentially that's not who we are. The alcoholism and the alcohol is not who we are.
No.
And it's very hard for us to see that when everybody is treating us like that is who we are.
I agree completely. Last week, loved our conversation last week, living with addicts, drug addicts, going back to the full nuts and bolts of it, because the drugs are never the problem. Alcohol isn't the problem. That's a solution, a very poor solution for people not to deal with their opportunities. It doesn't allow for people to actually move through their things until we create places that are safe, that people can talk and we can go to. We're never going to change that, which is bringing me up to a much bigger conversation. What society do we want? What do we want in society? Are we ready to sit here and change the generational trauma that has been created through alcohol, through avoidance of ourselves and not owning that? Is that the true bravery these days? Are we brave enough to take on that challenge? I'm up for it.
I think it's definitely time that we change. Definitely change happening.
Yeah. And it all starts with conversations like this. Now, listen, we've been going for an hour and 3 minutes, so I want to thank you. Thank you. As in every conversation we do, this is just a starting point. We're having conversations because we're all needing to learn and grow. We're all opening our ears and not our mouths so we can hear others speak, so we can learn, hear experiences and go, you know what, maybe that's a good idea. Maybe we can implement that. And, so I'm so grateful for that. But tonight, as per usual, I'm going to ask everybody for one bit of advice. I just want one bit of advice. Scenario is you live in an alcohol-fueled environment. What do you do? Lisa.
Bring it back to yourself. I think the only solution was, what is it in me that is in this environment? And what do I need to look at in myself that's got me here? And what do I need to empower? How can I take my power back in that situation? And it might just be a little thing. It might just be, I just need to walk out of the room right now. In any situation, how can I take my power back in this situation?
Beautiful. Thank you. Kylie.
If anyone has ever told you that your drinking is a problem or it has hurt you, then you need to start looking at getting help for that. Yeah, and it starts with you. Like Lisa said, you have got to find a way to help yourself, because ultimately the only one you're ever hurting is yourself. you'll hurt everyone else around you and do things, but they'll just abandon you.
Thank you. And thank you for putting on the table tonight. Darren.
I think the girls have summed it up beautifully. And I also think we need to be brave. We need to be okay to stick our neck out and do something different. Because yesterday is past for anyone who's going through it. What you're living in the present moment with alcohol and what you've been through in the past to this point, tomorrow's a new day. So you have a choice tomorrow to do something about it, or you have a choice right in this minute while you're listening to this right now. And if you're living in an alcohol relationship or you are an alcoholic yourself, you have a choice to make right now. And you need to be brave because you can change it if you want to. Look yourself in the mirror, you might like what's the picture that's coming back at you right now. So reach out to some people who can help you because there's lots of damn good people out there. I'm extremely grateful. I've had some great friends who've been there to help me. And if you're going through it right now, don't give up. Be brave. You can come out the other side and your life can be amazing. So just don't give up, whatever you do. I think there's a really relevant poem, which I'm just going to go grab because it's in the other room. I think I should read it because it's relevant. Be right back.
Grab it. Thank you. So, thank you. And for me, if you can recognize that alcohol is a problem, thank you. It's a great starting point. Now take the responsibility to seek opportunities about moving forward. Because you're worth it. And the problem is never the problem. It's our response to the problem that creates the opportunity. Yeah.
All right. I don't read poems very often, but the book is really relevant for anyone who's going through it at the moment. It's called Freedom from Fear. And the poem's called You Must Not Quit. So when things go wrong, as they sometimes will, when the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, when you want to smile but you have to sigh, when care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is strange with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns. And many a failure was turned about when he might have won had he stuck it out. Don't give up through the pace seems slow. You may succeed with another blow. Success is failure turned upside down. Turned inside out. The silver tint of clouds of doubt. And you never can tell how close you are. It may be near when it seems so far. So stick in the fight when you're hardest hit. And when things seem worse, that's when you must not quit.
Can I just add something to that?
Yeah.
Really important. It's a moment before you're about to have a baby and you think you're going to die. And you're just like, oh my God, this is the worst thing in the whole world. And it's like that moment and you think you're going to die and you just want to give up. That's the moment you're about to have the baby.
There you go.
So remember, that's the moment you're about to have the baby. The new you.
Yeah.
I have a sign on my wall, normally behind me. It's always the last key on the ring that opens the door. Don't quit.
Yeah.
On that tonight, I really want to thank all the panelists. Thank you, Darren, for your first panel. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your heart. Kylie, as always. Lisa Jayne, thank you very much.
Thanks,
I'll
guys.
be back next week. I'm just working on the opportunities next week for topics. I'm going to change things a little bit. I'm going to put some topics up and then get some people in to come and talk about them. But I really appreciate everyone's heart and honesty in these conversations, because this is how we change the world. One conversation at a time, listening to each other. Thank you very much, campers. Take care, and I'll see you again next Thursday. Thanks, guys. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right.